Cowboy leads a different kind of life. When there were cowboys. They're a dying breed. Still means something to me, though. A couple of days, we'll move this herd across the river. Driving through the valley. Oh, there's nothing like bringing in a herd.
See, now that's great. Your life makes sense to you. What's so funny?
You city folk, you worry about a lot.
Well, I'm just saying.
How old are you? 38.
39.
Yeah. You all come up here about the same age, same problems. Spend about 50 weeks a year getting knots in your rope, and then you think 2 weeks up here will time for you. None of you get it. Do you know what the secret of life is?
No, what?
This.
Your finger?
One thing. Just one thing. You stick to that and everything else don't mean...
That's great, but what's the one thing?
That's what you gotta figure out.
Hi, my name is Kelly Ramsey, and I have had the amazing opportunity to be in camp ministry for the past 24 years. The one thing for me I would say for leadership is communication. As a leader, it's imperative to respectfully communicate clear vision, mission, expectation, and care to those I am leading. Some unique ways to communicate might be doing team building, going out on offsite excursions, maybe doing team evaluations where you're giving positive and constructive feedback how things are going, workshops to help communicate clearly that vision and mission, to care and really see those that one gets to walk alongside with as a leader, and to communicate that can present many wonderful opportunities and challenges. Communicating care and respect is not always easy or fluffy, as many times as leaders we have to make the hard decisions. So as leaders, I would encourage you to continue to grow and learn in communication skills, and that's something we can always challenge ourselves with. And those of us that are in Christian ministry, taking that time to really stop and seek the Lord, especially when conflict and are coming up within our teams. So good luck with your ministries, and thanks a lot.
You know, when I think about leadership and I think about that one thing, you know, I think a chief executive has kind of 5 major responsibilities: keeper of the vision, keeper of the culture, keeper of the talent, fundraising, and risk management. But I would say at the end of the day, the thing that is probably the most important is to be the one that drives and maintains the culture. You can have a culture go toxic in a New York minute, and so you have to really focus on and spend time really trying to understand what are the drivers of your culture. And when I think about the organization that I'm involved in now, we had some culture issues, and we had to turn that culture around. So we did it with really understanding not just the generation that had been there a long time, but the newest generation that's a part of it. And I would say, pay a little bit closer attention to the millennials. I actually think they have more answers than we give them credit for. So my one thing is be the keeper of the culture.
Hey everybody, I'm Greg Mingarelli here at UCYC in Prescott, Arizona. If I had to boil down leadership to just one thing, I would talk about humility. I think it is the most important thing when we look at leadership. And I look to Philippians 2 and Jesus' example for us that Paul recorded when he talked about taking the form of a servant and being found in the likeness of men and to the point of death on a cross. And so I look at Jesus' life here on earth and his servant leadership as a pattern that I like to try to follow. I think loving and caring for our staff, putting their interests above our own, and really displaying that kind of servant leadership is one of the most important things I can do. Secondly, I'd point to a book called The Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni. In there, he talks about 3 values: humble, hungry, smart. These are values that we've adopted, and I think, again, really epitomize the life of Jesus here on earth of being a servant leader. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rick Hicks. I've been involved in camping for about 20 years. I used to work at Forest Home Christian Conference Center, and I switched over to working in missions, and I was the president of Operation Mobilization for work there for about 20 years, and now I'm the chief culture officer at a private equity firm in Laguna Beach. Well, I've been asked to answer the question, what is the one thing in leadership? And I got some bad news. I don't think there is just one thing. I think it's a multitude of things to be a good leader, and it takes wisdom to put all those things together. But there is one area of focus. And the one area of focus, and I get it really from Proverbs 27:23. It says, know well the condition of your flock and pay attention to your herds. And that's basically saying know who you lead, be aware, be in touch. And for us to do that, we need to be vulnerable as leaders. And if you can create vulnerability and open up, that opens up the door to people being more honest, more courageous, having the freedom to fail, really risking out there, addressing conflict. So I think that part of vulnerability is really important, and it starts with the leader. If you can't be vulnerable, they're not going to be vulnerable, and it just tightens up the organization. So the one question I have for you is, are you vulnerable with your people? And if not, come up with some ways that you can be personable, open, and vulnerable. That's my one thing.
Hi, I'm Greg Hunter, president of CCCA, and I think the one thing that's most important in a quality leader is humility. I think humility allows us to listen to the voice of many advisors, like our leadership team, our board, and others. We're told many times in Proverbs that that's the wise approach. When we wield our power and authority as leaders like a sword, when we use it to intimidate or bully or to mandate things all the time or regularly, I think we're exhibiting pride and not humility. And I think that will hinder our leadership. I think we need to recognize with humility that we're here by the grace of God, not because we're the smartest person in the world, but the God who gives and takes away has us here for such a time as this until he's done with us in this place. So we hold our position and our authority open-handedly. We collect input from others to help us in our decision-making. So my question for you is, do you have someone in your life, a mentor, spouse, or a trusted employee, whom you can ask, am I exhibiting humility or pride in my leadership? What do you see? Thank you. God bless you.
What is my one thing on Christian leadership? Learn to follow well. The best Christian leaders, first, foremost, and always recognize themselves as followers of Jesus Christ. The original apostles were not called to come and lead. They were called to come and follow. And from their obedient following, they became dynamic, life-changing leaders. Leadership is seen as strong, where following is seen as weak, but true strength comes in remembering that we follow after Jesus Christ. Humility-based followership is the pathway to dynamic, Christ-centered leadership. Question: what are some of the common traps that we fall into that stop us from following Jesus Christ?
Hey, my name is Megan Marshman, and the one thing that I would say about leadership, specifically Christian leaders, is that Christian leaders are followers first. When Jesus calls people to come through the gospel narratives, he says, "Come follow me." He does not say, "Come lead for me." But we've still been given opportunities to lead. So what do we do with that? We have to be followers first as we lead. Yes, we'll oftentimes need to be the first people to take a step. We'll need to lead the way, but hopefully we're leading the way towards Jesus. And as we have to take the first step to forgive, to love, to make big decisions within organizations, what we have to constantly be battling is doing that on our own. Leaders find themselves at the top, and as Christian leaders, there's someone who's above, and that's the Lord. So my question for you all would be, what would it look like practically for you to lead while following Jesus? Have fun with that one. Figure it out together.
This is Nate Parks. The one thing about a leader is, I would say this: become a learning leader. Not all leaders are great learners, but a great learning leader will have tremendous impact far beyond just acquiring knowledge. Let me just give you 3 ideas. You know what it says about you? It says humility. It understands that you don't have all the answers, and in fact that you value other people. Number 2, it says, you know what, I need to change. Not perfect by myself. I'm not set in my ways. I'm willing to explore and to grow. The third thing it says is, I'm not afraid of a challenge. I'm not afraid of a struggle. See, as we get set in our leadership, we become soft. And the reality is, we need to strain, to learn, because learning helps us become humble. It helps us change, and it helps us confront challenges as we go. One question: what stimulates your learning as a leader?
Hey everybody, Greg Mingarelli, UCYC. If I were to point to one thing that really has been important to me in terms of leadership, I would say it's arrogance. It's very important that you show a lot of confidence and ultimately arrogance when you're leading people. You need to really beat them down and point out those things that they're not doing well, and show them over and over again where they're screwing up, the mistakes they've made. It's very important that you correct them continually, and you do that out of arrogance. Thanks.
One thing: generous with the individual. Be generous. Just give of your time, give of your resources. And I say the individual because I think sometimes we think, I'm being generous within my organization, I'm going above and beyond, I'm not just giving 40 hours, I'm just giving as much as possible, and yet we only see it organizationally and we don't see the individual. The times that stand out over the last 20 years are times when people gave generously of their time, they gave generously of their listening ear. They didn't give me a ton of advice, they maybe asked good questions. I had to pry out the words, they weren't cramming them down my face. So to make an impact and influence, which I think is what we're called to do as leaders, be generous with the individual. Don't just wait for large circles. Take that time. Go to places, do things with people. Generous with the individual. Saw Jesus do it. I love it when people have done that with me.
So the one thing when it comes to leadership is relationship. I always think of the phrase connection comes first. And it's so important, and it really works for all of our relationships, whether we're a parent or a leader at work or in our relationship with our spouse and with our friends. Really, our connection with others is the most important thing, and that includes with people we are leading. So I would suggest, as a question to ask yourself and maybe take back to your team, is think about some simple relationship building practice that either you can do or you can start as like a team-wide practice. For example, you could just start by taking 30 seconds to a minute when you're greeting the people you lead to greet them by name with a smile and ask them about something that you know is going on in their life outside of work. That really promotes that kind of relationship that you're wanting people to feel at work, that sense of belonging. When people love where they work and their leader, they feel a sense of family. And I think that's what leaders can really create.
Hey, Doug Chase from Arizona. We run 3 larger properties here. Hey, I wanted to share a couple things with you really about working with the generations and how we get to, in a camp environment, work with multi-generation. One of the things we really enjoy is just mentoring and working with these guys, making them feel like part of the family. That's the big leadership tip. How do you do that? Just-in-time mentoring is one. You know, the old days of meeting with these guys once a week doesn't work anymore. They can Google every answer they need to get immediately, so you need to be Google to them. You need to be able to answer them quickly. So just be available. You might need to think of new ways to do that. Is it texting? Whatever that is, just figure that out. Come up with ways that work for them with you. Secondly is reverse mentoring. You got to take the time to listen to them. So your mission, but they're talking to you about what they want to do with your mission. So the big question I leave you with is, what do you do when they leave? Do you celebrate? You're going to invest a lot in them and creating good leaders. Do you celebrate, or are you bummed out and trying to figure out how to fix the problem? So we celebrate. There you go. Thanks.
Leadership, like you said, Stan, is such a broad category. How do you narrow it down to one thing? Come on, that's not even fair. But the one thing I think today I would focus on is resilience. How to manage your expectations, and then when things don't go the way you thought they would, or when people don't behave the way you expected them to, or whatever the disappointment is, even when things go beyond what your expectations are. How do you rebound, and what's your resilience factor? How do you come back in the game and stay in the game, and then be willing to come back to the table and say, okay, what's the next right answer? And to make whatever adjustments are needed in order to rebound, come back at it, look forward, and say, let's keep moving. And what is the next right answer? Put one foot on the ground, show up at the table, and move forward.
Stan, thanks for asking the question about what's the one thing when it comes to leadership that stands out. You and I have talked about leadership many times in this very office, what works, what doesn't work. And if you're asking what's one thing that really sticks out to me, I think it's really teamwork. Teamwork that builds trust. One of the first aspects of teamwork is really open communication. Open communication allows for honest feedback. It allows for employees to ask questions. It allows for team members to bounce ideas back and forth and really find out what's best for whatever that particular problem is. So the second aspect of teamwork is respect. A lot of people think that as a team you all have to get along, but the truth is you may not be friends with everyone on your team, but you have to respect everyone on your team. So a third aspect of teamwork is commitment. Commitment is understanding the goals and the direction of the team and following through. When the whole team succeeds, then you succeed.
So the fourth aspect of teamwork is really about adaptability. As a team member, you may come in thinking you're going to do one job, you may end up doing a whole nother job. There are days when I'm in a store stocking things, and there are days when I'm out shoveling. It's all about being part of the team. My question to you is, when you look at your teams, are they teams that are building trust that allow you to do great things? Thanks.
Hi, I'm Sarah. You know, to be a leader, you don't have to be the boldest or loudest, the slickest or most articulate, even the most knowledgeable in the room. People are yearning for a leader that they want to follow. And so, my one thing when it comes to leadership is integrity. A leader with integrity is grounded in a moral compass that compels them to be authentic and honest, vulnerable, consistent, open to feedback, confident about their strengths, but open about their weaknesses, stepping out courageously even when they are afraid, a leader who keeps their promises. Barna research reveals that 4 needs of willing followers are stability, trust, compassion, and hope. A leader with integrity certainly can meet those needs. And so, what slice of integrity can you and your team or organization strengthen in the days ahead? Be a leader that people want to follow.
What's the one thing when it comes to leadership? I'll put this out there: consistency. Think about it. When we are acting in a consistent manner, when we are consistent people, it fosters trust in the people around us, the people that we're trying to lead. And we're reflecting God's character as well, who He is and what He does. Those are the reasons we trust Him. And the benefits of that, the benefits of being consistent, are that people know what to expect, right? They're freed up to be all that they are called to be, and we inspire confidence in them. I think that's important when it comes to our calling in leading people. So here's a question for you. When you assess your own life, what's one thing that you could stop doing that would help promote further consistency in your life? And you can flip that on its head as well. What's one thing that you could start doing as an individual, or perhaps even as a staff, to foster consistency and thereby promoting trust in your world, your job, and your ministry?
Hi, my name is Patrick Beaver, and I have been asked to share what I believe is the one thing in successful leadership. Well, there are many elements of successful leadership. All kinds of personality traits: communicator, visionary, risk-taker, intelligence, adaptability, creativity, goal-oriented. And there's a lot of leaders who are leaders just because of their position: wealth, power, luck, connections, or even by accident. But what is the one thing that is required for successful and effective leadership? I believe that one thing is trust. Trust must be earned, and trust must be freely given. Without trust, leadership is just a line on an organizational chart. Not to be trusted as a leader means you will only be followed out of fear, greed, or convenience. I believe the key to leadership is not love, friendship, ambition, intelligence, fear, beauty, wealth, position, or title, but trust. Trust earned over time that you will be consistent, purposeful, respectful, engaged, and fair-minded, and willing to lead. So I ask you, have you earned the trust of those to whom you are accountable and responsible? Thanks.
I think the word that comes to mind with leadership is integrity. Are we people of truth? Certainly we're committed to God's word as our truth, but as we work with our staff, even if we're letting a staff go, are we truthful about that? Are we truthful with our other staff about why this person is being let go? Or when we work with donors, if there's something that has happened at camp, do we shade the truth to protect ourselves or trust God to tell the truth? Because at the end of the day, we want trust by those who have entrusted their students, their families, their resources to us. So speak the truth in love, but speak the truth. And ask yourself and your staff, are we men and women of truth and of integrity?
What is a big leadership quality that I'm looking for in leaders and or that I try to show as a leader? Honestly, I think I got to say joy. I'm looking for leaders that have joy. Joy is different from happiness, right? Joy in the Lord, as I look as a Christian, it says in Philippians 4 and 5, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice, let my gentleness be evident to all that the Lord is near. I think that's the thing. I want to show off joy, and I want to work with people that have the joy of the Lord. How I interact in situations, how the way that I have the joy of the Lord, so am I showing that off in the way that I'm leading people, in the way that I'm talking to people, in the way that I'm loving people. So I think I would ask the question to you all, those that you are leading, those that you are overseeing, how are you showing the joy of the Lord in the way that you're interacting with the people around you? And how are they showing off the joy of the Lord as well? That's it.
My friend Stan White has asked me to reflect on the one thing I think is most critical for leadership, and here it is. Be careful how you define success, because it will drive everything you do. As leaders, we define success for ourselves and our role. We define success for our organization. And that definition is critical for everything that we do. We find that when we ask leaders about their true definition of success, it seems to fall into one of two categories. It's either about production, what I produce and do, or it's about faithfulness. Am I hearing what God wants us to do and doing it with courage, obedience, and faithfulness? Production and faithfulness, those two definitions send us down very different paths as leaders and as organizations. And this I know, if you start with faithfulness, God can use you to be incredibly productive. If you start with production, you never get back to faithfulness. So, how do you define success?
Hi, I'm John Frank, and I'm sharing with you the leadership just one thing. Mine is taken from a book, Summoned to Lead by Leonard Sweet. He writes, leaders are neither born nor made. Leaders are summoned. They are called into existence by circumstances, and those who rise to the occasion are leaders. As I work through my years of working with ministries and leadership and other things, I can say this is really true, is that we sometimes think leaders are made or born, but it's not really true. They're summoned through circumstances and situations that the Lord prepares us for, and then he summons leaders. So the question that is to be posed to you is, are you prepared to be summoned by God to lead? Are you doing the things that you need to do so that when it's your time, the Lord will summon you? Summoned to lead.